Damn, Australia, ease up a bit. The Medium is an upcoming psychological horror game developed by Bloober Team, and if you don't know who they are, well then ma'am, let me give you a rundown. Bloober Team are the talented devs behind 2016's Layers of Fear, a psychological horror game about a psychologically disturbed painter trying to complete his magnum opus as he explores a Victorian mansion, revealing secrets about his past. A very popular game at the time amongst YouTube Let's Players like Markiplier, Jacksepticeye and the such, and a year later they struck again with Observer. Not to be confused with the British newspaper. No, this game is much more interesting and very underrated. Observer is a psychological horror, you see the trend here, set in a cyberpunk future and follows Daniel Lazarski, a detective known as an observer, who can hack people's minds as a form of interrogation. In fact, a remaster of the game is being released very soon called Observer System Redux. It's got a few added things in there as well. Definitely pick that up if you can. And just last year they released Layers of Fear 2, which is another psychological horror game. But bringing the focus back to where it should be now that you're all caught up, The Medium was revealed at Microsoft's Xbox Showcase back in July and looks to be one of the most visually unique games coming out this year. Okay, so while I was editing this, there was an announcement that because of Cyberpunk 2077 being delayed and coming out pretty much the same day that The Medium was going to come out, Bloober Team have now decided to delay The Medium until January 28th. Not too much of a delay, but still a small delay. God, they love these announcements while I'm doing the middle of editing, don't they? Couple that with the talented devs and the power of next-gen hardware, and we have a game that will define horror for the next generation. Now, what is The Medium? The Medium is a psychological horror, which is different from survival horror. So survival horror would be in the same vein as, say, Resident Evil, where, say, the horror comes from your anxiety through lack of resources, like inventory management, things like that. It's a lot more action orientated, whereas psychological horror tends to try and get your mind to play tricks on itself and create fear through uneasy atmosphere and sound design, things like that. And the main theme of The Medium is duality. I push my fingers into my So they talk about the theme of duality, which we'll talk about a bit more in a few minutes. But what I really do hope for this game is that they explore real deep themes and use symbolism to get those themes across. Now, you'll hear me talk about Silent Hill quite a bit in this video, and there are reasons for that. But I'd like to see this game tackle things that would be a bit more brave on their part. Not so on the nose, but also kind of taboo subjects that a lot of other developers might not really want to go for. And symbolism is obviously very important to not be on the nose and kind of make things a bit more subtle about what you're trying to say. But as I said, this is a psychological horror, which also means that this game shouldn't really rely too much on jump scares. Now, that's not to say that there won't be jump scares in there. I'm fairly certain there will be. Boom! There's one for you right there. It seems like this game relies more on creating an unsettling atmosphere, turning your own mind against you, filling your whole body with dread until the fear completely grips you, leaving you paralyzed, pushing you deep down into a pit of despair within your own mind, to the point that even when you shut off the console and the screen goes black, you're left staring at your own reflection, pondering your vapid mental state. Which is in the same vein as Silent Hill. And you can see a lot of similarities between the two. For instance, I mean, it's third person for one. No tank controls, thank God. That can stay in the past. You see in all of the gameplay trailers, there's a lot of foggy environments around, which obviously creates a sense of unease. You know, you don't know what's out there. Use of a flashlight. I mean, it's a horror game. Like every horror game has use of a flashlight because, you know, people are scared of the dark. Hopefully there's a lot of spare batteries. That's not something I want to run around hunting for, to be honest. And this idea of a dual reality. So I mentioned earlier there's the theme of duality. Well, that comes into play with this dual reality. The main point that this game is kind of showcasing is they can render these two realities simultaneously side by side. So you're seeing both worlds rendered together. And that's done obviously because of the power of the next gen console. Now, one thing I like about the two reality system in Silent Hill, so obviously they're separate from each other, you transition into them, it's not rendered at the same time. But the thing I like about that is the fact that the geography of Silent Hill moves around and really disorientates the player, creating this sense of unease. You know, you go down one way and you're like, hang on, I could go down here a second ago, and it's like a brick wall now, I can't get here. You feel like you know an area, and then suddenly, nope, not anymore. I really hope they do something like that here. I think that's really effective just to completely get the player turned around, not to the point where they have no idea where they're going to get lost, but just enough to make them feel a bit uneasy about what's going to be around the next corner. And while we're comparing it to Silent Hill, we need to talk about the music. Now, this is in collaboration with Akira Yamaoka, and he was the composer for the Silent Hill series. And if you've seen or played the Silent Hill series, you know it has some of the most amazing, hauntingly beautiful music in any horror game I've ever heard. Couple that with a lot of very industrial sounds, the sirens, and real gritty metallic sort of noises. But then also, say when it comes to Silent Hill 2, you have things like trip hop, that sort of style as well, and when they're all bundled together, it creates an amazing sound. So I'm very excited to hear the music in this. The music in Silent Hill 2 is just and the environments in this game look absolutely incredible. All the environments are inspired by famous Polish painter, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Zdzisław Beksiński. Just look at some of his work and then look at some of the gameplay for the medium. If you want to know more about him and his work, then I highly recommend the video The Nightmare Artist by In Praise of Shadows. It's a very interesting video on the guy and his career, and it's incredible to see. And again, I would describe his work as just hauntingly beautiful. And obviously The Nightmare Artist is an apt name. We haven't really seen any enemies so far except the Moor, and that's spelt like cat's paw, not like Roger Moore. But again, we haven't actually really seen it. We've only heard it. You would have heard the voice of the Moor before because it's voiced by Troy Baker, who's been in practically almost every single video game in the last 10 years, most notably Joel from The Last of Us. And the Moor is described as an entity born from rage, much like the local Karen. And the choice of the word entity is good because it's nondescript, which adds a sense of mystery in the player's mind. They don't really know what they're in for when they meet this entity. We don't know if it's a creature, we don't know, does it have a physical being? It's just a thing is all we really know right now. And that's the thing that really scares people, it's the unknown. So because we don't really know what this thing is, it's an entity, that's what creates the fear in your mind. So I am excited to see what this creature or thing is going to turn out to be. Gameplay looks really interesting. Movement happens simultaneously in both worlds. So like I said, the world is split. You see both realities at the same time and you're just walking through. Now this isn't for 100% of the game that you see both realities, which is good because I imagine that could be quite obstructive. But in the sections where the two realities are involved, let's say dominant reality, the one that you're most involved in at the time of what you need to do, takes up more of the screen, so the other one kind of is less important, so it squeezes down. So that goes both ways for each one you want to use. But like I said, that's not 100% of the time. Sometimes you will just be looking at one reality. What I am glad about is when you do see both realities, it doesn't look to be twin stick. So the one stick moves around both at the same time and obviously then your camera, which is great because I would hate it to be twin stick. I've recently been playing Ni no Kuni, and in one section of that you have to take a trial and you need to control two different characters with each stick, but then there's platforms that are falling, you need to not fall off the edge, and then at one point they cross each other, so then it's like mirrored, and then it's just, I almost threw my controller. It was an absolute nightmare. Hated it. Glad that was the only thing like that in that game. But anyway, what I'm getting at is I'm glad that you don't have to use both sticks to control her in both realities, because she's still geographically in the same place, so you won't be moving her separately. She'll just be in the same place but in two realities. And you need to switch between these two realities to solve puzzles. And this opens up so many possibilities. I'm really, really hoping that the puzzles they've laid out have, say, more than one way to go about the solution. Obviously still involving the two worlds, but I'm hoping that the players get creativity with the way that they solve the puzzles, because that's really what we want. Space for creativity. And what's more is I hope they're not too abstract with the way that the puzzles are solved. So I'd like the idea of having many different ways to solve a puzzle, but at the same time, I don't want it to be like old school point and click ridiculous ways of solving a puzzle, like pixel perfect place that you had to click on the screen or something. That's quite an old school way of doing things now, so I'm fairly certain that probably won't be there. And there's things called spirit wells. They look pretty interesting as well. Spirit wells are only in the dark, creepy reality. And what you can do from there is draw energy from these spirit wells and then use that energy to power electrical things in the normal world. So for instance, here you can see she's drawing from a spirit well to use the energy to unlock the secret entrance to where she actually already is. but you also see how one reality takes over the other one for control, so you see it all play out here. And I like this idea of spirit worlds. I'm just wondering if it could be used for more things than just powering electrical things. I'm very excited to see how all of this comes together, especially with the music. My interest is piqued. Bloober Team have had enough practice and have proven themselves in the horror genre. Silent Hill has largely been forgotten about by Konami, so to have a new game that's heavily inspired by the Silent Hill games and have the original composer from them on board as well fills me with a lot of confidence towards the quality of the medium. Though that confidence will turn to fear as I shit my pants while playing it. It's okay, I'm prepared. The medium has such huge talent behind it, and I believe all the influences will shine through and give us an experience that grips us, and one we won't soon forget as it defines horror for the next generation. What influences are you looking forward to seeing in the medium? Do you think the dual reality aspect will be a gimmick, or will it add substance? Let's discuss it down in the comments. Strike fear into the heart of the like button, and subscribe for discussions on all things gaming, past, present and future. Click the card at the end to see why The Last of Us Part 2 is not a fun game, and I'll see you over there. Bye bye.